Bob Wankel's Crossing Broad covers the Phillies as they get ready to take on the Brewers. They lose 2-3 to the Mets in what was a wild series at Citizens Bank Park. Had a little bit of everything that you can conjure up. And also, is there another center fielder who could be in the mix now? Joe Girardi speaking today about the possibility of moving someone else to center field because, Bob, apparently the fourth one isn't getting the job done either in Odubel Herrera. I don't know that that's the biggest story, but I guess we'll start there because I thought him mentioning that Nick Maton may be a candidate to play center field now. That's how bad it's gotten that they can't find anyone, so let's just stick Nick Maton out there.
Yeah, that was what came out a few minutes ago. They were talking about Nick Maton now getting some fly ball reps. And, if they don't get any production out of center field and Gene Segura comes back later this week, maybe that's something they consider. And there's a couple different ways they could go about that. They could just throw him out there and say it can't be any worse. Or they could maybe send him out for a couple of weeks, let him get some reps at minor league sites, and then bring him back and maybe make him your everyday center fielder and see how that goes. To be honest with you, though, what we saw this weekend, there are so many issues on this team right now that I've actually kind of my attention span has drifted away from center field, because there's just so many different issues going on. And certainly center field remains at the top of the list, but I almost have center field fatigue at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that one just because the news came out so recently that he just said that. But you're right. I mean, I guess one of the laundry list of problems that we saw over the weekend was the defense or lack thereof. And, I mean, it's all over the diamond that this team is having problems.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this team, if you believe in advanced defensive metrics, defensive runs saved is a big one that a lot of people point to. The Phillies have the second worst team defensive runs saved this season in the National League behind only the Chicago Cubs. You just look at it, they don't pass the eye test. JT Realmuto is a plus defender behind the plate. Harper is adequate in right field. Roman Quinn, when he's out there, I guess you could say gives you adequate defense with the range and then the arm. But when you look around the diamond, you look around the outfield, they're bad defensively. I mean, and they have several players who are just inadequate. Alec Boehm has been a mess, whether it's the physical tools or just a lack of confidence and a lack of ability to establish a rhythm. He's been very bad. And then you go across the other side of the infield to Rhys Hoskins, who last night it was all on display. I mean, just a horrendous play in a key spot compounded by a mental error. And, is he that bad? I don't know, but he struggles at first base consistently as well. So it's a bad defense. And Mike, the thing that jumps out at me, man, is that poor defenses at the major league level shouldn't be this pronounced. You might say, that left fielder doesn't have a ton of range. He should have gotten to that ball. But to watch this team drop fly balls, boot ground balls, struggle to make throws on a daily basis, it's insane. And I mean, it really jumps off the page at you.
Right. Well, and you hear I don't know if you were listening. Were you at the game last night or were you listening?
For all 3 hours and 54 minutes of it, I was there last night.
All right. Well, A-Rod brings up about how much the Yankees are missing Didi defensively, and I'm thinking, my God, how bad is their shortstop? Because Didi, look, I love the guy. He's a clutch guy, but defensively, he has been rough so far this year.
Yeah, he's really struggled as well. And a guy that, again, you like him. Historically, he's been an adequate defensive shortstop. But this year, small sample, only a month in, but he's really struggled as well. So now you're talking about potentially moving a utility infielder out to center field because you haven't gotten anything out of Roman Quinn. You haven't had anything from Mickey Moniak, Adam Hazley, now Odubel Herrera. And that's the situation that they're in. And when you look at now the way that this bullpen's struggling on top of it, it's hard to feel good about what you're seeing right now. And we may have said it before, they're only a game out of the division. They're only 2 games under 500. It's very early. But I think when you step back and look at what this team was a year ago and look at some of the struggles that they had in both 2018 and 2019, that's why I'm not so willing to just write it off to, hey, it's only been 4 or 5 weeks, no big deal. I think that a lot of their flaws, which have been fatal flaws in the past, are rearing its head again in this short sample here. And I got to tell you, man, it's a concern.
All right, so you were there, which means you could give us a better view than the ESPN cameras did last night of what actually happened. The ball, eats up Hoskins. He kind of half hustles after it, and then what happened?
Well, I think what happened was he was expecting the runner to hold, and so he kind of nonchalantly flipped the ball to the second baseman when there was really no need to do it. I mean, you teach kids at the little league level, at the JV baseball level, hey, like run it in, heads up, eyes up on third when you have a guy standing on third base. You just never know. And I think Reese kind of just dropped his eyes, took it for granted, and softly lobbed it back into the infield. And it was a heads-up play on the part of the Mets. A lot of guys aren't going to go in that spot. Jonathan Villar did a nice job. He read it, and he broke for home. And it's just a completely unacceptable play. And I guess, it raises a larger question, which is, these guys are Major League Baseball players, and they have to know better. And so, do you really put that on the manager? But I do think it kind of becomes an indictment. When you look at this team and the way that they play on a nightly basis, it's just like an apathetic group sometimes. It's an indifferent group. And it's not to say that these guys don't want to win, but they just seem to be wired in a way that they just don't have that game-to-game edge, that grittiness, that ability to want to bear down in tight spots. And you can credit them, I guess, for coming back in the ninth inning last night, but the damage was done. And I think that kind of draws back to the manager a little bit. To me, I think at some point you have to start looking at the manager and saying, hey, I know he doesn't have all the ingredients to be a 95-game winner, but what exactly is going on in that clubhouse right now?
Right.
Well, I think that's a fair question.
Bob, he says afterwards, we work on it, we do it all the time. I mean, is that his way of saying, hey, we do it, these guys just aren't that good? Because he did mention, we practice it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. And I don't know, man. And it's like I go back to it. If you're coaching high school kids or maybe coaching college kids, it's a little bit different than major leaguers, guys that have been around. This is a veteran team. So does Joe Girardi need to go into the clubhouse after the game last night and flip tables and scream and drop the F-bomb on them and fire up the troops? Or
right.
I think maybe sometimes we as fans, we overrate, and we as media people, we overrate this stuff. But there just seems to be this, they just slog through games.
It's funny it's funny you say that because of the whole thing that happened with the Cardinals. Neris ends up hitting the guy, and I joke. I said, well, the game that they didn't retaliate, they win. The game that they retaliate, they lose. I thought the retaliation was supposed to bring them closer together. That didn't happen. So then you have Alvarado gets into it with Smith. I thought that was supposed to jumpstart. All this machismo is supposed to, and it hasn't worked out. So, I mean, yeah, it's just all that stuff to me is just kind of whatever. I mean, you hit me, I hit you. What year is this?
Yeah, and I kind of tend to agree with you. I just think that it's more of just how this team's wired in general. It's not that I'm shocked that they didn't go on a 5-game win streak after the incident in St. Louis, but
right.
You do wonder. You look at this game tonight, the Brewers are playing really well right now. Frankly, they're not as talented as their record indicates. They're playing way above their heads. Do the Phillies have any pride here after just a complete meltdown on national TV last night? It's not all just analytics. It's not just, matchups. It's not just, hey, we have a righty at bat and this is a lefty and that righty hits the lefty. At some point, there's a human element to this as a competitor. You got to want to say enough's enough. And this team has blown a number of opportunities in the early going. And I'm very curious to see how they respond tonight if they get an opportunity to, weather permitting. But they're going to be down Bryce Harper, who won't be in the lineup. He re-aggravated his wrist injury. So there's no Bryce Harper tonight. Odubel Herrera will be in right. And this is a situation now that we have to monitor closely. They're not quite sure whether or not Bryce Harper, is headed to the IL. It's something that he's being evaluated for. And, they're going to have to kind of cross their fingers on that one.
Yeah, and you tweeted something out, too, that stands out. Eflin, Wheeler, Nola, just because they're on the mound anymore doesn't mean you're winning those games.
Yeah, 4 straight losses now with those guys on the mound. And, you might go through a season where your top 3 guys go through a turn of the rotation and not win games. But when you're 4 and 5 or Vince Velasquez and Chase Anderson and Matt Moore, I think it certainly adds a little bit of extra pressure to win the games when those guys are on the mound. And I'll tell you one thing, if the Phillies make a habit of blowing Eflin, Nola, Wheeler starts, they're in deep trouble. And the only thing and the best thing that the Phillies have going for it right now is that the 2020 NL East or the 2021 NL East looks a lot like the 2020 NFC East. This was a division that we talked about had so much depth and how everybody was going to be so good. And really the division from top to bottom has been a nightmare so far.
Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad. There were a couple. No, let me get your real quick. on the home run from Hoskins last night. You were there, so you get a better – again, we didn't get a great view on television of what happened. Did you think that was the right call?
Yeah, I mean, in real time, I thought he cleared the fence, but when I went back and I looked at the replays like everybody else did, I felt like they got it right, honestly. The thing that I kind of kept coming back to was I know it looked a little bit like of a 50-50 type of angle, but the chair didn't move. Like the seat didn't move. And to me, like if it hit the seat, you would have seen some type of jolt or shake in the seat. And so I don't know. You know what, Mike? My main takeaway from it was just the way that they had played in the game. I couldn't work myself up over
you didn't want to stay. You didn't want to stay any longer.
It wasn't even that. Like, yes, like I was getting ready to delete the 1,000-word story and everything, and that would have been fine. But I just felt like the replay shouldn't have been the main story coming out of last night, because I think the reality of the situation is you have an inconsistent lineup, just an atrocious defense, and so many other problems that I couldn't work myself into a fury over instant replay last night. I thought they got the call right, though, to answer your question.
And this team was killed by bad bullpen last year. That was a big reason why they lost so many of the games. I mean, their bullpen is still not great, but it's cut like 2 runs off. Is the bullpen a part of why they're 500?
I mean, the bullpen has struggled here the last couple of weeks, and it's, you can talk about some of the guys that they've had missing, but they've also just had guys straight up not do the job. Jose Alvarado last night, for all the talk, goes out and doesn't get the job done. Brandon Kinsler has struggled in some key spots recently. And David Hale, some of this comes back to Joe Girardi too. I know he doesn't have a ton of bullets out there, and I know that he's been trying to manage the workload of certain guys, especially early in the season. Doesn't want these guys to break down come July, August, September. But David Hale, I mean, you just keep seeing this guy in high leverage spot after high leverage spot, and he just does not have it. And
No.
I do not know for the life of me why they continue to go to him when it seems like things matter most.
By the way, Gabe Kapler is doing a good job. They're in first place out there.
It's amazing. It's absolutely
It's my favorite.
amazing.
It's my favorite story of the year, Bob. I love that story that Kapler is out there with this half-assed team, and they're in first place in the division that has the Dodgers in it. I don't know how long, but I remember hearing how much of a problem the manager was.
Yeah, you know what? I think it became pretty evident a couple of years ago that the problems here went well beyond the manager. And I think that is certainly playing itself out now.
All right, Phillies and Brewers. They'll begin the 3-game set, weather permit. Is it going to rain today? I need rain tonight.
Yeah, it looks – I mean, I just looked at the weather app before we jumped on here. It looks like a lot of thunderstorms in the area coming through around 7, 8 o'clock. So we'll see what they do here.
All right, Bob Wankel crossing Broad, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Bob, good to see you, man.
All right, Mike, talk to you soon.
He'll be back on Friday to take a look at the Phillies weekend.